Hey, family. Look at here, look at here. It is another Monday night if you're watching this live. And if you're not watching this live, it's whatever day and whatever time you watch it. But this is a Monday evening. And, when we're doing things here in Connecticut in the name of More Monday CT or even representing something like that, y'all can best assured it's probably going to happen on a Monday. You're absolutely correct. Anyway. This is these conversations, I call them relevant conversation with me. Bishop John Selders here, and I'm glad to be coming to you on these airways. You know, the technology got it so that we could be in multiple places, and yet for a period of time, we could be talking to you, sharing with one another, and doing this thing that we do. And tonight is not going to be any different than the other times we have shared in this platform. I have two of my peoples, let me say my Connecticut peoples, a brother and sister, who for almost the entire time my family and I have been in Connecticut, I've known these two peoples. I mean, and listen here. When I say we done been through a couple of things, that's all I'm gonna say. We've been through a couple of things together, and we're here tonight to talk about something that I have been. If I could be honest, can I just be transparent? Can I be honest for a second? I've been wanting to talk about this right here. You know, I'm from St. Louis. Y'all know I'm from St. Louis, so you know my language will slip up in there and here, there, where, you know. If you don't know, you don't know. But if you know, there you go. I've been wanting to really share and talk about this. Part of my background has something to do with me being an African Orthodox priest. Some of y'all don't know that. And in fact, my episcopacy is derived in part from the African Orthodox Church. And so in that tradition, if you are a Christian or follower of Jesus, we're in the season of Lent. It's the 40-day season, the journey that begins on Ash Wednesday, that gets us through to Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Resurrection Sunday morning. And during this period and this season, a number of things happen in the Christian tradition that we pay a particular attention to. And let me also put on top of this, as we are in this season this year, we have been sharing with our Muslim siblings of faith who have been, in fact, in observance of the month of fasting they call Ramadan. And of course, you can't have Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday without talking about the Jewish tradition of Passover. What we call the Last Supper was for Jews their Seder meal, and the observance of the tradition, the storytelling that talks about the great transition and move from Egypt into what we call and what the Hebrew people call the Promised Land, and their journey from slavery into freedom. So this is a very sacred time for those of us of the Abrahamic traditions. And so we're going to talk tonight about the Stations of the Cross, and our sister and our brother are here with us to kind of help us have this conversation. Let me bring to this platform the Reverend Dr. Shelley D. Best and the Reverend Dr. Anthony L. Bennett. Come on here and greet the peoples. Greet the peoples.
Hey.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right.
Good evening, my sister. Good evening, my brother. Good evening, good people.
All righty. Yes. So here we go. We ain't rehearsed this, y'all. This is we ain't rehearsed nothing.
No need.
We're doing the best we can. What we gonna do though, Reverend Dr. Shelley has been inspired by the Lord. The Lord. You hear me, brother Bennett? You know, my the Lord.
Lord.
You know, my Mississippi self comes shining through at times. Words just can't say it right until you say it with the vernacular on it. Anyway, y'all know I'm silly, and it's kind of late, and I done had a long day today, so it is what it is tonight. She has been gifted by the Lord to use her creativity in a way to journey with us this and introduce to us, and Reverend Bennett, Pastor Bennett, and the family down at Mount Airy Church in Bridgeport will be featuring this, I'm going to call it art, this expression of creativity, and talking about what is known to many of us as the Stations of the Cross. Now, I know. You done heard about that, but that's the stuff that some other people do, and we don't necessarily know about Stations of the Cross. But if you have perhaps had the opportunity to journey to the Holy Land, and if in that journey you went to the old city in Jerusalem, well, there is no doubt in my mind you did not go there without having some moment that you paid attention to some of the holy shrines and the holy spaces and places. You perhaps got to see, the place where Jesus was crucified. We call it Golgotha. Today, they done built a church on it. It is the church of the... My people would have said the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. That's what they called it. So, right?
Sepulchre.
The sepulchre, right? Sepulchre. y'all funny right there. But the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. No, I can't say it right now, Rev Shelley. I can't even say it right. But you've gone there. You've gone in, and what was the tomb? Well, in fact, there are not just one tomb, but there are a couple. There's one garden tomb, and then within the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, there's another tomb, right? So there are a number of places that there is a place where we believe Jesus, the actual cross, sat. You've gone there. Now, if you've also gone, you've seen or maybe even heard of a place that is now called the Via della Rosa. Mm-hmm. Or the Via Crucis, which is literally, it means a place of painful journey or process, a distressing or painful journey or process, or the actual word Via della Rosa actually means painful path, or the way of sorrow, or the sorrowful way. These are ways in which the Via della Rosa, and then we got some pretty wonderful music around the Via della Rosa, right? Any pilgrimage to the Holy Land and to Jerusalem in particular would then have you, at least in part, journey on this way of the cross, right? If you're on that way of the cross, there are a number of places. There's a winding route from the Antonia Fortress, which is yeah. If you've ever been around, and I know I got at least one Baptist preacher here. If you've ever been around a good black preacher, he gonna talk about he was taken from Judgment Hall to Judgment Hall. Right. So Jesus, if you gonna preach. Right, in a classic Black Baptist church idiom, from Judgment Hall to Judgment Hall. Well, there is a representation of that on the Via della Rosa, and it's about a 2,000 feet trajectory, almost a mile, not quite a mile, journey from the fortress, the Antonia Fortress, to actually the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And it's in that journey, there are places and spaces that have been venerated. Let me just tell you, since the 2nd century, y'all. So since the beginning of the 2nd century, people have somehow along this path, they have stopped and done some prayers, done some reflecting, done some talking about this place of this sorrowful place. Now, let me stop. Did I miss anything so far?
That was good.
Work it, brother. Work it.
All right.
Except that Baptist part. We'll talk about that Baptist part later.
All right. I'm gonna need some hope on it. I'm gonna need some hope because I'm sanctified. So there's another way we know how to go. So from about the 2nd century, history records, those of us have done a little seminary work and done some study. We know that really Christianity there were not one Christianity. There were many Christianities, and there was an attempt by the Emperor Constantine to bring a little bit of commonality and to celebrate that within the context of this particular faith tradition that at a point got us around the 4th century, so around the year 300 and something another, where these sites were then venerated and made important. So Golgotha, Calvary, Bethlehem, the Church of the Nativity scene, these places that were deemed important. And again, both you have been to these places, so you've seen these sites where there was something important that was to be understood as important for those of us who are Christians. They built churches on it. If it was important for Muslims, they built mosques upon it. If it was important for Jewish people, there was a synagogue or something other put on it. So all over the Holy Land, Palestine, Israel, are these sacred sites that have these meanings. It is in that context that the way of the cross is one way or one tradition of reflection. So you'll go to the holy city and you'll find people on this way, and they'll be singing, and they'll be praying. There'll be lines of folk, and this tradition, as we now know it. Now, let me be very clear. By the 5th century, there were all kinds of sites because everybody, just like today, didn't get the opportunity to go to the Holy Land. Mm-hmm. So what was then suggested by several of the leaders of the church, you create your own way of the cross. So and you use, people were not able to read like we can read today. They weren't literate in the same way. So what was used by the faithful were smells, so incense, or bells, or candles being lit. There were other ways to invoke that which is sacred or holy within the community of faith. And so it was encouraged that people create these spaces and places all over the world, all over, and largely because this was driven by the one church in many different forms, coming out of, people don't understand, Africa birthed all of it. But anyway, I ain't gonna stay there. But,
why not? Stay there, Doc. Stay there for just a minute.
Well, because
talking about veneration, Doc. That's what's been in my spirit.
Yes,
and various forms of Christianities.
That's the Christianities, and I'm a believer.
We coming home.
That's exactly right. These traditions then by the 4th, 5th century became a way of being across Christendom. So there were all these different spaces and places, and there were dozens and dozens. In fact, one source I read said there were, in fact, we talk about 14 stations. Some of them had 400 and 500 stations of the cross, right? So there were all these other spaces and places where they said, listen, to be faithful, to practice this faithful devotional tradition, which is what the Via Dolorosa or the Way of the Cross became, then you do this in all kinds of ways. By the 1700s, 18th century, the Franciscan community, the monastic priestly community took over. Okay, this is how it's going to be. And they began to regularize and or standardize what we now call the Way of the Cross. There are 14 stations in its traditional understanding that in fact are practiced as a devotion, a way to actually bring folk, especially during this time, this holy time of Lent, as we journey to Calvary and the cross, to do that. Now, that's the setup for what Reverend Shelley has done. Could you talk a little bit about, how you got to this point, and then the creation of this Way of the Cross, this journey of the Stations of the Cross?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having us this evening to talk about it. I think it starts out for me because, like some of us, I was raised Roman Catholic, and having come through that practice, I was one who was fascinated with the images. I was very fascinated with that and the spirituality. So I was always one to have an attraction towards the mystics and the ancient church. And so that's what I held on to through Catholic faith. And as time went on and I developed my own journey, I gave my life to the Lord, became a born again Christian at First Cathedral, what it is now. It was First Baptist back then. Gave my life to the Lord, but then eventually ended up Methodist. But in all that, I've always been an artist. And so for me, I'm an artist and I'm a meditator. And so when I paint, I pray. And so I have a practice where whatever I paint usually is a spiritual expression. I will spend some time just staring at the empty canvas until I am directed. Just like the preacher has to sit there till the Lord gives the message. I sit there and I look at an empty canvas until I see something, and God will give me an image that I see. And for my paintings now, mostly, I'm very fascinated by stained glass. Once again, that sort of Catholic influence. And so, like I said, when I paint, I pray. I'll stare at the canvas till I see the image. And usually God will show me patterns. And so my process is to then grid out the pattern on the canvas. And that way, when I paint, I don't have to think, I can just pray. And so with the Stations of the Cross, I thought it would be a wonderful devotion to think about the journey of the crucifixion, but to think about it a different way, because I wanted to think about it from the womanist perspective, a female theology, a Black female theology. And I wanted to think about the journey of the crucifixion from the inside out, because most expressions of the journey of the cross are outside looking. So usually it's people watching Jesus be beaten, watching the robe be torn, watching this taken from him, external watching him fall down. Then he fell down again, watching Veronica wipe his face. Not that that was biblically actually there, but anyway. So mostly the way people depict the Stations of the Cross is external observation. And as a womanist, I wanted to express it as internal. What was the psychological journey of Jesus through the crucifixion? Because I know for some people, they are humbled by the crucifixion journey, and they're humbled because of the beating. I think about people that enjoyed that movie. What was that?
Mel Gibson.
Yeah, and he was just beaten. Jesus was beaten like hamburger, and people needed to see him beaten like hamburger to feel a devotion to him. That's a different kind of Christianity. And I think that's a different lens, that they like the beatings and the external observation of Jesus. And for me, and for, I think, many people of color, and as a womanist, we know him from the inside out. It ain't from the outside in. I feel him on the inside. So this journey of the crucifixion that I painted and prayed is the inside journey, where I meditated on various phases of his journey and what it must have felt like. I just sat in, what did it feel like to be betrayed by people that you love, to be called out in public, to be humiliated? What did it feel like? And so that's what this journey is really all about. And originally it was at Redeemer's Church where I was pastoring. And now I'm grateful that it's at Mount Airy and it's been there for the Lenten season, just to create that atmosphere of prayer. And I believe it's a way of delivering ministry in a different way, that we can be visual too. We can have music and we can have vision. And that's what this collection is all about.
Dr. Bennett, could you talk a little bit about what led to you saying, hey, let's have this happen, to take this journey at Mount Airy?
So the human process was Dr. Best called me and said that you said I should call, that you should
Okay, all right.
That's the human form, right? And then she and I had a chance to talk. I looked at some of the pieces, and I think in a deeper way, since pastoring there in '94, and then coming from New York, I have sought to step out of the traditional box, and in my own personal faith of connecting head, heart, and the Kuumba creativity. And because we do the Ma'afa commemoration, which seeks to embody the creativity, the perseverance of our people, when Dr. Best shared with me what it was all about and knew a little bit of her journey, it was like, bet, we there. You know, I am thankful for the people of Mount Airy, for their openness, for on some level their holistic approach to ministry. That, you know, the intellect, you know, some of them are very kinesthetic, as some of us are, and so just hearing it and then seeing it, and then when she came and preached Ash Wednesday, there were people who connected to this artwork, even though they didn't fully understand what it was, but there was something aesthetically spiritual that on some level we're still anticipating the deeper journey and exploration that will take place on Saturday and Sunday, that will reveal on some level what was in your mind, and what was in your heart, what was in your spirit, what were you ruminating on. So I think we look forward to that.
So what we wanted to do is at least begin this conversation. Now I've already said that Dr. Best, that this is this whole series. We gonna go deep, and our community here with Amistad Church Hartford, we go kind of deep, and so this Lenten season for us has been woo-wee. We start talking about Pilate on Sunday in a way that I, quite frankly, have never actually ever talked about it. That's an offline conversation, Dr. Bennett. But anyway, what the Stations of the Cross has a traditional trajectory, and it is from judgment hall to judgment hall, literally, when Jesus is condemned to death, and then the stations go something like this. He takes up his cross, and again, on the Via Dolorosa, the literal walk, the literal way in Jerusalem, there are churches and spaces and placards and things. Jesus falls for the first time, that's one of the Stations of the Cross. And then Jesus meets his mother on the way to the cross. And then there's Simon of Cyrene, and you can't be no black preacher without talking about Simon the African. That's on one of them first and one of them only times you can name a black person in the gospel story. Now, of course, some of us would say Jesus was probably
Black too.
A colored man. But anyway, I y'all can have what you want to have. I'm gonna take what I'm gonna have. Amen. If you can make God white, you sure can make God black. Amen. I'm gonna keep going. Then you mentioned Dr. Bess about Veronica wiping his face. This is where we get the have any of you ever heard of the shroud of Turin? Well, some of this comes out of this tradition, right? That says we need these relics, these holy things that we can touch. Again, remember, for the vast majority of history dating back 2,000 years, people have been what we would call word illiterate. I don't want to say that they haven't had knowledge and a deep sense of knowing, because they have, but they used knowing and they gained information from multiple sources, one of which was visual, so that you could look at something or touch something and then bring sacredness or holiness to it. And here's what I say about it. We don't know where Jesus was born or where he died, because wasn't no video. However, if you go to them places, hey, now I feel my help coming now. When you go to those places,
watch your tone,
all right?
watch your tone.
You go to them places, all of a sudden something do come up on you and says this ain't regular. This is something special here. So I believe when people pray, when people sing, when people bring their faith to a place, boy, then it is we're standing on holy ground. Take off your shoes, Moses, for the place you're standing on is holy, right? So it is in that context. Jesus falls a second time. Then he's there met with these women of Jerusalem. He falls yet again. He's stripped of his clothes. He's nailed to the cross. He dies on the cross. Then they take him down from the cross, and then they lay him in the tomb. Those are the traditional stations of the cross. Now, Reverend Shelley, she has some images, and she's recast these stations based on what you named from a womanist internal perspective. And so what I'd like to do is show several of these pieces. We won't get to all of them, but show a few of these pieces. Now, one of our friends just chimed in and said that the labyrinths were created in part as a substitution for the pilgrimages to Jerusalem. So some of you have had the experience of doing prayer labyrinths or walking around in each little spot and praying. This is the same kind of thing. Now Catholic churches and Orthodox churches, the ancient denominations, or as my grandmama would say, nominations, or reformations of the church. But that in fact we have some of these too. You can't do. If you've been around some sanctified Baptists, well, that communion table is something other. And they just a whole thing. There's a movie called Say Amen Somebody that features in one part some folk that I'm related to. And I mean by blood. And one of my cousins who used to set the table at the gospel choir, the convention of gospel choirs and choruses. And so, and she's Baptist Costal shown up. And so they wear white gloves and they set the table in a certain kind of way, and you bring the all of that holiness. And listen, you can say it ain't in the Bible or not, but you sure know what they're doing is conveying, or can I say this word? Y'all don't want to be mad at me. They're conjuring some spirit. Right? There's something when we do the rituals that we do, and so I'm gonna say that. Come on, Reverend Shelley. Talk to us about this first station. Let me see. Now I'm going to try something new now. So if it worked, amen. Come on, Holy Ghost. Help everything happen. Help everything happen. All right. We're going to go to, hang on for a second and make sure I'm on the right everything. Now I tried this earlier. Talk to us a little bit about this right here. What is this right here? Here we go. There you go. Uh-oh.
Oh, there we go.
There it is. What that is.
This one is called The Moment the Soul Trembles. And the moment the soul trembles, it represents Jesus being in the Garden of Gethsemane. When Jesus is praying to the Lord, Lord, let this cup pass from me. And so you see in the colors, the darkness of the blue sky as he's praying in the garden. And then you see the flecks of red, meaning the blood that's dropping on the leaves, because it says he prayed until his
great
sweat
drops
was
of
like
blood.
blood. Right.
Yeah.
And so what I wanted to get into with this piece was the moment it hits Jesus, this thing is about to start. Lord, take this cup from me. And to realize I'm going to go on this journey. It's not going to be easy. I don't have the strength. You got to take me through it, Lord. And so it's for us to understand that we go through these journeys of crucifixion to know it may not feel good. Jesus knew what was coming, but God will bring you through it. Sometimes we have to have those moments of prayer.
Yeah. And this is your first station, right? This moment, I love the way you title it, The Moment the Soul Trembles.
Because
right?
he knew what was coming. Fully human, fully divine. Well, now this thing is about to start. And I'm praying, and I asked them to pray with me, and they are not here praying. And I knew that would happen too.
Can you not watch with me? Right.
Can you just no, they can't.
See,
yeah, they are going to let you down.
They can't. My God.
The moment the soul trembles when you just out here as a leader by yourself, but you got to be faithful.
Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Here we go to screen number 2. Now you talked about this with me and did a little describing. So this is the second station, right?
And this one is sold for slave silver. Sold for slave silver. So once again, that night sky, and we know that Judas went and sold him out for 30 coins, which was equal to what slaves were sold for in that day. So at the bottom, you see that angle representing a bag of money, and the little boxes at the bottom represent the coins being thrown out. So Jesus was sold for 30 pieces of silver. And so imagine your teacher sold out for so little, just sold out as a slave, not even a high price to sell out your teacher. And so for those of us who have been on the journey of life, to know that sometimes you are sold for little, you've been undervalued. And I think many of us feel this in our Blackness, to be undervalued, underpaid for the journey. And that too is what Jesus was facing in that moment, knowing that he had been sold for the price of a slave.
So again, I want to just pause for a moment and step through what the traditional stations of the cross would have reflected. The Jesus being condemned before Pilate, and you all know we've been studying the Gospel of John. So there were, he went to see Annas, and then he went to see Caiaphas, and then finally got to Pilate, and Jesus was brought before Pilate. And I love what, Pilate said, well, what did you do that got you all in trouble? He said, well, you ought to ask the people that brought me to you. I didn't bring myself in front of you. They know what it is that I can tell you this, however, I'm not from this world, my kingdom, because they were trying to get him on a political technicality. Jesus, the King of the Jews, they said. So you all see this. You see how Reverend Shelley is actually dabbling into what are the traditional spaces, how the stations have been viewed. And yet now she's turning inward. So the second station of the cross is called when Jesus takes up his cross. And I love this one in particular, Reverend Shelley. Bless my whole world when we got to talking about it. This one right here. This one right chunk. This one
because
right
for us, of course, we can relate to him being sold for slave silver.
Right.
That's got to be in our stations of the cross. He was sold out. And how undervalued for Jesus to just be sold for a few coins. This one is called When Love is Wounded. And so it's representing the X is Judas betrays him. It's a broken relationship. And so once again, the inward journey, first Jesus knows his disciples don't hang with him. Next, he knows he's been sold out by one of them. And then also is recognized, I've been betrayed completely, not just sold out, but betrayed. And now the soldiers are going to arrest me. And so it's to understand what it is to be sold out. Sometimes that does happen. And if someone you loved or cared for hurt you, this station is for you to recognize what it is to be affirmed even in that. And many of us know what it is to be betrayed. The journey of crucifixion might involve, love that goes bad. And so there's a certain betrayal in that. And so it's to reflect on that in our own lives.
Bishop, if I can ask Dr. Best this, how long did it take you to create each piece?
It depended on the piece, but what I did was I took about a month and I did them all. I did the 14 stations in the course of a month. So I had a very devoted, took probably 2 weeks off. And each piece, it just depends. Some are a few days. Some might be a few hours. It depends on the piece. And then it depends on how long it takes for it to come, the praying time, to get a sense of what it's going to be.
Is there a companion, either study, sermon, workshop for each one? I know we won't do it on Saturday, but because each piece to me in and of itself could, to go deep into it. Let's say the previous one, the one about betrayal, and this one is just is baffling as I hear you talk. It's just powerful.
So that's why it probably does need to be the book. So I will be encouraged to do deeper writing on it.
I felt that. Listen, that I don't know if that was prophecy, conjure, whatever you want to say, confirmation, whatever you want to make it.
Yeah. See, I think what you're hitting on is that there is, and I think I want to kind of run through all of them, Reverend Shelley and Dr. Bennett, because at least you get introduced. There's something here that I think has value, and that internal part, it's the inward seed, Howard Thurman would say, right? He says in that piece that we have this, that there is that moment of your silent consent, your acquiescing to that which is within. That only happens. Nothing happens in the world. In fact, Thurman says, nothing happens without your co-signature within your own life and spirit journey, right? And so I think the musings of what happens when love is wounded. This is what this stands for. Boy, I can say that for a whole long time. Let's go to the next one. Please, let's go to the next one.
And this one is the weight of denial. The weight of denial. And so we know that Jesus told Peter that he was going to deny him 3 times. And Peter's like, no, Lord, I would never deny you. But we know that he did. So what you see at the bottom right-hand corner is my image of, I'm thinking of a garbage can with fire coming up at the angle. And at the angle is the idea of Peter standing there in front of the fire, denying the fact that he knew Jesus. And it's as if in that moment, as he denies Christ, then you can see those crosses in the background. It's like the cross raises and moves in the background as Peter denies him.
Let's keep moving. This one, it gets me kind of intrigued too.
So this one is when power misunderstands purpose. When power misunderstands purpose. So it represents when Pilate condemned Jesus, really for him to protect his position. And so we talked a bit about that this past Sunday, because Pilate was just a bureaucrat trying to keep his job. He wasn't caught up in the whole thing, but he didn't understand the significance of Jesus being before him. He's just trying to keep his job.
Yeah.
I'm just doing my job.
Just doing my job. My God.
So listen, again, this one is, you talk about this one as the when power misunderstands purpose, right? When power misunderstands purpose, it is that juxtaposition of how. So our brother Cornel West says, love. What does love look like? Well, when it's private, it's tender. When it's public, it's justice. Right. So justice is sacrificed in this moment. If I understand you correctly, justice is sacrifice. You say justice is sacrifice for comfort.
Absolutely. And that's what we're seeing now in this world that we're living in now. And that's a different kind of pain too. That's a different kind of betrayal when institutions can fail you and injustice shows up. Jesus didn't deserve that, but Pilate, I'm just doing my job. That's the policy.
Yeah. We're gonna, boy, we can stay here for a long time, Dr. Bennett. I'm gonna move on quickly.
Man, I ain't saying nothing. I'm not saying nothing because I want to stay on the first, second, third, and fourth one now. So go ahead. I know you're trying to get through them all, Doctor. I'll
yes,
wait.
Sir. Here though, for sure.
This is the one. This image is called "The Price of Leadership," and it's representing the crown of thorns. And it happens to be the piece that I usually gift to leaders. And so for leaders, I share this with them because when you are in leadership, there is a price that is paid in leadership. And so with this, Jesus was mocked. The crown of thorns was put on his head, and the corners represent the blood that came out of his head with the crown. But it's also recognizing he understands that leadership has a price paid. There is a wound of leadership. Even Jesus got hurt being a leader, and he was perfect. Wow. But them folk hurt him. Isn't that something? We wonder, we get hurt in leadership, but even Jesus got hurt in leadership. And then think about what wounded him the most as a leader.
So here I would lift up what our brother again, Cornel West, said. We were talking about this, Reverend Best, the other day. It's that moment when Cornel West said it like this. He said, there is a condition of truth. That condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. I wonder, as we and then he goes on to say, and then the condition of being the truth is to transform your suffering with great creativity and compassion into forms and deeds that empower others to do likewise in their own ways. That's the whole of that that quote. This cost of leadership, again, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the cost and joy of discipleship. That's another phrase of that. What does it mean? Now, again, speaking inwardly, if in fact Jesus is the model, right? Then what might it mean, and what do we want, or even do we allow ourselves to allow our suffering, if we're going to bear our cross, how do we allow that suffering, that bearing, to actually speak, right? And in what ways do we do that? How do we live that out? How do we actualize what that means, other than, as the saints used to say when I go, Lord, it's a suffering way. And what they really meant is, I got to deny myself of everything. I can't go to the movies. I can't smoke cigarettes. I can't do nothing but just wear all these clothes and be all stiff and tight. It's a suffering way, they would say. And yet, what we know in a contemporary context, that's just one way of naming that, right? But in our contemporary context, how do we say, as Dr. King might have said, that suffering has a transformative function in community and in a society. When we then speak, allow that to speak, what does it say? And how does it then co-create and to create a better world and a better space? Dr. Bennett, I seen you lean forward.
Man, you know, it's like that double dutch. I'm ready to jump in, right? So I guess I have another question alongside of that question, because it assumes that the cross, the crown of thorns, is the leadership. What is the tension and the dialogue between that traditional view and the womanist view, aspects of the womanist view, which doesn't always embrace that view of suffering as inevitable? So do you have any perspective on that?
I would say this piece unpacks more because it taps into the resilience of leadership. And so I am going to the emotional side of leadership. The traditional side is looking more at the beating and the political ramifications of him declaring himself king. But I'm looking at the wound of the pain, the inner pain, the struggle of leadership, and also what it means to pulling through that journey. So that's the difference.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna keep going. We can stay here long.
Right. Every one of them could be a whole.
Yeah,
right.
It's a whole in and of itself. Here's something. Look at here. Lord, don't fail me now. All right, that's all of them, but I don't want all of them. So there's
the cross to the side next to the crown of thorns.
Look at here. Nah, it's going. So I'm gonna jump out of this just for a second. I'm gonna stop sharing just for a second. Let's get this back on. Let's get it back together.
So as you're doing it, I'll talk through the next two crosses. So the first cross was called the weight of being misunderstood. And so the first cross image is the idea of Jesus carrying the cross himself. And in the traditional form of the Stations of the Cross, they usually reflect on him falling. He falls down. It's too heavy for him. But what I'm focused on is what it felt like for him to be carrying the cross alone. Carrying the cross alone in the midst of a crowd of people. It's the weight of being misunderstood. And so it's the reminder for so many of us that we have seasons of carrying the cross where we feel like our work isn't being seen or we aren't being seen. And so it's to affirm your impact in those times of invisibility when you feel like you're carrying this thing all by yourself. So then the second cross is called the unexpected brother. So now we're at 5, 6, 7, 8, station 8. The unexpected brother. And we know in our lore, the story of Simon of Cyrene, this brother happens to be in town when all this is jumping off. Jesus is carrying the cross and the officials grab a hold of him and tell him to help him carry this cross. So this brother is compelled to help Jesus carry the cross. And so there's a difference in the depiction of the cross in that image because there's a lot more color. So it represents the idea that now community is sharing the burden of carrying the cross. Jesus doesn't carry it alone, but the community carries it. So theologically, from my Afrocentristic perspective, I believe it represents all of Blackness carrying the cross in a different kind of way that other kind of folk. And that's why Simon of Cyrene was there. And it's the reminder that somehow we carry this burden. We carry this burden as a people. So the two crosses.
Keep going, Reverend. Keep going.
So then the next image is called Sacred Tears and Sacred Knowing. Sacred Tears and Sacred Knowing. And in the image, there are darker squares at the bottom and lighter squares at the top. So sort of representing a more ghostly kind of sacred image. But as you look at it closely, you will notice that there is a cross that's lifted up. And so it represents the women who were bearing witness. There's a scene in the crucifixion where the women were weeping for Jesus. And so they bear witness. Other folks might have been the crowd, but it was mentioned in the text that these women stood by and wept. And so it's the reminder of the deep empathy. What did it feel like to Jesus to see the women weeping for him? So that was ministry coming to Jesus. And yet Jesus always has compassion as well. But it had to feel like something for him to have the experience of some folks crying for him. Yes, I know the crowd said crucify him, but thank God for the sisters who were there weeping for him. And that probably was a way to nurture him. So that's the cross that Simon of Cyrene was carrying.
Is that the one?
That's the Simon of Cyrene one. Next one.
Okay. Oh Lord. Okay. Keep talking. I'm gonna get there.
There you go. And so the next one is of the women weeping for him with that cross up on the hill, sort of seeing what's happening. What is happening in our midst? And yet they cared for him. Then the next one, station 10, is the breaking that opens the way. There's a moment when he is put on the cross where he says, and in the scripture it talks about the curtain being ripped open. And so now it has broken forth. Something supernatural has happened on that cross where Jesus has his heart breaking open with love as he's there in that journey. So he's reminded of why he's there. So for those of us that are on the journey, it's for being reminded that sometimes being brokenhearted is the reminder that hope will help us breathe all over again. And so in that moment, I believe Jesus was refreshed to go through it because the cross was breaking things open. Then the next one is my favorite image. It's my Golgotha, the 3 crosses up on the hill. And we know what happened there, where Jesus had 2 brothers on the cross on either side. And today you'll be with me in paradise. And so for that image, it's what it felt like for Jesus to offer that to the repentant thief. That's why he was there. The feeling that even in his suffering can give something to somebody that's there with him. And it's also the notion for those of us that feel unworthy to know that you are still beloved. And so it's that reminder that no matter what, you are still loved. And even Jesus had gone through humiliation through the crucifixion. There had to be some moments of shame and feeling rejected. And yet we're just reminded that there's some grace in that.
Listen, I wanted to stop right there. So let me see if I can get this at least to show. Here we go. Let's see.
Yep, there it is. That's
Golgotha. There it is.
So seeing the 3 elevated crosses. And then as you look at them, there's sort of a counter reflection down below. So it's just that reminder of the mercy that comes on the cross. And it wasn't just Jesus offering mercy. He had to feel something inside too in the midst of this moment. So that's grace that finds us. That's what that one is called.
Wow, grace that finds us. My God.
And isn't that an interesting juxtaposition? Then, you know, the story of the he was hung between 2 thieves, right? Mm-hmm. And today you'll be with me in paradise. That's one reflection. But to think about grace in that context, right? Who amongst us, you know, would not like to, in the moment of when we find ourselves in that space of being not only accused but convicted. Oh my God. When we have wronged, right? Or when we done wrong, or when we have been accused of doing wrong and go through the process. You don't even have to be, listen to me speak in my vernacular. You don't have to be done that wrong. But to be accused of having done the wrong thing and needing, as it were, grace extended. But also, if you want grace, what about extending some grace? Talk. So I love the double, the up and down. So you got it on the hill, but then there's a reflection of how It happens on the ground, and there is. I'm getting ready to get into something. There is this notion of, listen, let your will be done on earth as it already is in heaven. I think I'm in the book somewhere.
And that's why it's reflected back. So we have the crosses that are up on the hill, and you see the reflection down below. So that grace is coming to us on earth as well. And think about it. Jesus had gone through the shame, being thrown away, tossed away, the way they were treating him like it was disposable, sold out as a slave. And yet in that moment, when he was between the other two thieves, one of the brothers was like, if you can help me, I take it. He saw Jesus as worth something, even in that moment where Jesus had been brought down to the lowest of worthlessness. And so that's the power of that showing up in that moment.
Talk about the last couple of ones.
So the next one is called Love Reweaves Itself. It's another pixelated view of the cross up on the hill. But in this one, you see two darker shaped images in blue representing John and Mary standing below the cross, watching Jesus in those last moments where Jesus looked down and turned John over to his mother and turned his mother over to John. And so it's recognizing that in this journey of crucifixion, there will be a time where relationships often change. And so in that moment, Jesus formed a new family at the cross, and we recognize that love can adapt and change the cross. And so for people that have gone through changes in relationships, this station affirms love's endurance. So you see those two bottom blue blocks representing John and Mary, and you see them imagining that cross up above, watching Jesus from down below. Then the next image is called Holy Stillness. Really that moment where everything goes silent and Jesus entrusts his spirit to God. Lord, unto you I commend my spirit. And so the next image is that quiet geometry of peace. And then the final image is called the womb of becoming, and it represents Jesus being placed in the tomb, where the waiting begins, life is still forming, and then we rise. So the womb of becoming is what the tomb is in the journey of resurrection.
Now go back to that station 13 for you. What is it called again?
The Holy Stillness.
Yes, the Holy Stillness. I'm gonna show that because let me tell you what came to me. Come on now, let's get this together. Y'all pray for me. This technology, we coming along. We give you
credit for trying.
You're doing it. You're doing it, Bishop. You're doing it, Bishop.
Y'all pray for me now. Look at this right here.
Yeah, man.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Maketh me to lie down in what? Green pastures. Look at that. If you can see that at the bottom, immediately I got that. That's what came to mind when I first viewed this, right? That there's these ways of knowing for us that what art invokes for us, right, has something to do with how we tap into our inner knowings. Y'all ain't hearing me yet, but you will in a moment. So we sing, we clap our hands, we throw our hands in there. All of these expressions, we dance. Again, I'm sanctified. So every now and then I'm a speak in tongues, and we gonna bucket a little bit, right? That's what I know, right? That's where I come from. But listen, this ain't no different than when we shake it. When we shake it, anytime I hear Flashlight, Parliament and Funkadelic, circa 1975, 74, 75, One Nation Under a Groove. There's some about some of this, right, that just, It makes you want to move. And art does that for us. It connects in places. It taps into the possibilities of our ways of knowing that move us in and then out of our own heads, right?
Mm-hmm.
And begins to tap that which is heartful, that which is spirit based. Reverend Shelley, I'm so very proud of the work that you have gifted us with. We're gonna spend some more. We at an hour, and I don't want to belong to the time any more than we need to or can, in fact. But what I wanted to make sure we did tonight was to say to you, first of all, thank you for the opportunity we have just to try to access something different, right? And to go through a number of these portraits, these expressions of your creativity. But let me also say something about let me prep your book a little bit. Let me promote your book, Creative Disruption. I think there's something very interesting about ways in which we can use our own expressions of the divine vis-a-vis our own art. Some of us spoken word, some of us can wax eloquently using the rhythm and rhyme. I think that's what preachers do. So we know a little bit about rap because we got some prose on it, right? We can string together a couple of words, but my grandmother said, "Boy, he sure can string them words together."
You can swirl some words now. Swirl some words,
right? So I think in lots of ways, here's what we are being tasked to tap into. Again, if you haven't heard the theme, folks, tonight, the theme really is how do we express these ways of knowing in such a way, not just so that we get the glad. See, I'm glad that the Holy Ghost comes, right? And then when the Holy Ghost comes, you get joy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But quite frankly, that wasn't Pentecost. Wasn't for you to get the joy. Pentecost was they spoke in other tongues as the Spirit gave utterance, so that other folk heard this language. And so the Medes and the Persians and the other folk heard their languages spoken to them, and they were praising God to the point that the people said, "Lord, they done broke out the ripple, and they done broke out this some new wine." Right? So I mean, that Pentecost, this expression of art through spoken word, if y'all can let me just do a little jazz right there, right? Speaking in tongues is really this expression of art by spoken word that actually changes the world. The music business didn't know what to do with rap. It broke through so that now you go to any part of the world and we were in Palestine, Israel. We heard hip hop in Arabic. My Lord,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? That it now has changed music. It's in a way. And then black people here in America said, "Well, okay, we're gonna do something else." They come up with this trap music. Now they miss me with that. I'll connect. But some people do. So here we are in this moment, and our sister has offered to us a way of knowing in the world, and I'm so appreciative of you. And so can we talk about Saturday just briefly for a moment? I know folks gonna be doing all kinds of stuff, but Saturday you're gonna be sharing with every church in Bridgeport.
From 10 to 12, we're going to gather for a time of prayer and going through the Stations of the Cross for those that might come, that will have that experience together, and just a time of fellowship for whoever comes to have fellowship during this time of Lent and to be prayerful and reflective. Because let's face it, we get so busy with the production of holidays, we forget the sacredness of our holy days.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a holy day activity before you get into the holiday rush of Easter activities. So come between 10 and 12 and get geared up for Holy Week.
All right. Dr. Bennett, last word.
Come.
All right, that was it. You heard it. You
There we
heard it
go.
straight from the horse's mouth. Listen, thank you all.
Thank you.
For
Thank you,
joining.
Doc.
Thank you for this conversation, this very interesting and reflective moment. Let me lastly say, for those of you who are faithful folk, you practice whatever tradition you practice, this is the time, I believe, whatever your tradition is, whatever your reformation, whatever your denomination, if you will, that you take a few beats and you think about the reasons and the why, and then how does any of this that we go through now, and there are plenty of people in the world going through some things. We're at war in places. War has been being raged. That's not in the headlines, right? There's conflict in the world, political and social upheavalment. Certainly, those of us here in the United States and in the West can talk about how money is real funny right along in through here for some of us. The cost of living is increasing. The price of anything has gone up, and everything. Lord have mercy, that gas, because they started dropping bombs, that gas done went up. It done went up, it done gone up. But in the ways in which we are, while we can take the moment and complain about it and talk about it, there are ways in which we can also reflect and really come through with why we are here, these existential questions, why we're here, what is our purpose. And I think viewing some of this and sitting in this, we may find a higher calling and a higher truth around it. So we pray that it sparks faith. And Reverend Shelley, can you come back, Dr. Bennett, of course, come back and share with us. I'm excited about the opportunity to spend more time with these stations of the cross to mine out deeper meaning. How about that, though? All right. All righty. Thank you all. We'll see y'all. Peace and blessings to you all. God bless.
God bless.